20%. Only 20% of marketers said they will use AI agents to automate their marketing in 2025. 8 out of 10 marketers are still sitting on the sidelines. AI isn't just another MarTech tool, it's causing a universal change in how customers expect to interact with brands. But most marketers see AI as an assistant, not a tool to improve their personalization at scale. So how do you move past AI assistants to improve your customer experiences? I'm Benjamin Shapiro, and joining me today is Dave Steer, the CMO of Webflow, which is a platform helping marketing teams build and optimize websites with enterprise-grade performance and AI-driven personalization. And today, Dave is going to show us how to navigate the AI boom and deliver digital experiences that move the needle. Dave, welcome to the MarTech podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ben. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you here. Excited to talk about, the topic of the year, probably the topic of the decade, navigating the AI boom. And we're probably going to get into some Boston sports metaphors here as well. Instead of starting off by talking about Mo Vaughn and his MVP, which is always forgotten, I want to ask you, why are marketing teams treating AI like a copywriting tool instead of thinking about it as something that is an experience shift for their consumers?
Well, first of all, anytime you bring the Red Sox up in the beginning part of a conversation, I have an elevated heart rate because I grew up in Boston watching the Red Sox, and I'm of an age where I grew up watching them lose more than win. And so I always have this elevated heart rate anytime anybody starts a conversation with the Red Sox. But look, I think we're speaking of baseball, we're in early innings as it relates to AI adoption across the board, both in the business and consumer landscape. The word that I see, the word on the street, is of all the teams within a company, within an organization, marketing teams are actually on the front end of AI adoption. And I think one of the reasons why is as marketers, we love to experiment. And, through the dawn of the age of marketing, there's always been new technologies coming our way. And AI is the latest of new technologies. It just so happens to be a game-changing one, not to bring baseball back up again. And so I see our profession really at the front edge of testing out these tools and seeing, has it really fit into the marketing mix and what can we do with it?
I'll preface this with I'm a San Francisco Giants fan, and I have some knowledge of Boston sports because I went to college there. And I'm sure this metaphor is going to go over almost everyone's head who listens to this. There's a difference between Doug Mankiewicz and David Ortiz, right? Doug Mankiewicz won a World Series. David Ortiz won a World Series. But one was a journeyman first baseman who barely played and nobody can remember his name and definitely can't spell it. And the other one is Big Papi.
Poppy.
Kind of a big deal Hall of Famer. And so when we talk about technology shifts in marketing, cool, somebody launched a new app or there's a new social channel and now we're shifting our media spend from Facebook to Instagram or to TikTok. That's a Doug Mankiewicz, right? It's like you just kind of playing a shell game and zero win over replacement. Then you get to something that is like a monumental, groundbreaking, the tip of the spear that is moving the Red Sox from lovable losers for 86 years to three-time world champions in a decade. And it's kind of a big effing deal. It's Big Papi. This is Big Papi. Okay, yeah, there's AI change. That's as deep as I can go on Boston sports, but I feel like I did a good job there.
You landed this one. You landed this one, Ben. Yeah.
It's a big deal, right? This is an iPhone moment. This is it's going to take 20 years to see this technology change roll out as opposed to, this is a 6 months trend. And going back to how marketers are adopting AI, there seems to be kind of a race to say we're doing this, but it doesn't seem like marketers have necessarily mastered the experiences. And most people are just being like, yeah, I use GPT to write my emails. It's cool. It's so much deeper than what the average marketer is actually using. You can't compare Doug Mankiewicz to Big Papi. So why are people treating AI most of us like it's Doug Minkiewicz.
Yeah, I just think that you landed this one. AI is the big poppy of the MarTech stack. And it's even more elevated than that. It's not just marketing technology in the MarTech stack. It's the game changer for how people get their work done, how people consume and interact with a knowledge base that far exceeds their imagination just a few years ago. I think this is bigger than the iPhone moment. I The closest that I can get to it is this is how it felt like when the commercial internet came. And that was a tectonic shift in how we thought about uh, content, how we thought about media, how we thought about connecting. I mean, that was really this first wave. And when I think back then, I was a young, sort of cub, just entering in the professional world at that point.
A
But
possock, if you will.
that was a Pawsock. I was coming up from the minor leagues, and I was surrounded by people who were like, "We know that this is going to change the way that we do our work. We don't necessarily know exactly how just yet, but we're gonna have to experiment our way into doing it." And back then, coming on the internet, one of the biggest things was, like, privacy and security, and are people going to be able to trust the fact that this nameless, faceless website with their personally identifiable information and their credit card information. And it took a while for society and for marketers specifically to get over that hump and to really figure out how does the website and how does the World Wide Web fit into the role of a marketer. I think we're at that age right now with AI. Not necessarily from a privacy and security perspective, but for sure from a trust perspective. And like I think about a lot of these things with tech, especially in the B2B world, is that a lot of it has to do with change. And when you think about change, it's really not just technology, it's people and process at the same time. And technology can shift really fast, but the people and process part of that change or that transformation, if you will, that takes time. And I think that's the age that we're in right now.
We are in the be-do, 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 be-do phase, right? Thank you. I'm glad you got it. The dial-up internet, like AI writes my copy, is the most elementary way to think of the usage of this technology. And look, the people that are forward thinking that are listening to this podcast are probably being like, please don't make that sound again. And we know this. And so, great. The other people are sitting on the sidelines, and if you're not thinking about how to interject artificial intelligence to automate your processes, you're a laggard. And I'm more curious to talk to the people that are actually implementing solutions to understand the sort of context filtering and, agent building. To me, that's really some of the ways that we're starting to just get into the way that artificial intelligence is actually going to facilitate communication and engagement and interaction, just like the World Wide Web did. So tell me a little bit about how you're seeing Webflow customers use AI personalization to improve experiences. What are people actually doing? How are they building to start to implement this technology outside of like, I need to write an email. Okay, here's my draft.
Yeah, yeah, great. I promise not to make that sound again. If for no other reason than the transcription service will have no idea how to insert that sound
I
into
feel
the
like we're
transcriber.
finally speaking its language, but go on.
Maybe we're speaking directly to the model right now when we say that. Well, look, I'll start by saying, and this is not a pitch for the product, but just to provide context. Webflow is what we call a website experience platform. It's a platform that enables anyone involved in marketing, and I think of marketing as a verb, not a noun. So it's really anybody involved in the marketing mix: designers, developers, growth marketers, product marketers, everybody involved to be on the same platform working together to deliver an experience on a website that is deeply immersive, on brand, and drives growth. And so the practitioners that I see among our customer base, and also the people who I meet who are very interested in what to do, they're thinking about how do I go from, let's say, wave one, which is content, which I think is a super important entryway into the use of AI in marketing, to wave two. And the wave two that I think about is like, how to use AI and automation broadly to create personalization on the website, to enable testing and optimization at scale, so that you're not just doing one A/B test, but you're running 100 A/B tests at the same time on your site, and you're using AI to inform and help you figure out what are the things I want to test. Like, for example, one of the primary blockers for a growth marketer who's into experimentation and optimization is, where do I start? Well, with platforms like ours, you can actually engage with the AI to come up with ideas for the things to test based on the interactions people have had on the website or the website experience up until that point. And so it's a long-winded way of answering your question. I think that people are looking to go beyond content and into other areas of the marketing mix to leverage AI to basically do at scale and at a quicker time what used to take, kind of a long time to do.
What I'm hearing is it's essentially automating the multivariant testing, right? And that's the beauty of AI is it can take unstructured data and make some sense out of it. And when you're looking at a website, you could say, "Hey, here's this website. What are the things that are possibly breaking and how do I test whether it's working?" Not specifically talking to Webflow, but to website optimization in general. One of the problems that one of the reasons why I haven't like tried to create different versions of our website is we just don't have that much traffic, right? And we've got a production business that, maybe some people that are interested in podcasters, like my mom, a couple of producers are coming to the website, gets little traffic. And so I'm kind of like, what's the point, right?
Yeah.
One experience is probably fine. But I'm now also feeling, I'm like, well, there's GEO or AEO, or are we still calling it SEO or whatever EO we're working on these days, where what content is on your owned properties gets fed into an LLM and that's actually what matters. And then they never come to your end property. They just interact with an LLM. So how much of the changing of your website and making that dynamic actually is for your website? How much traffic do you need to be able to do that? And then how do you think about the impact of having this sort of like dynamic being of a property and its effect on where people are doing most of their research, which is now LLMs?
Yeah. If there's one, kind of message that I want to impress on anyone listening to this podcast, it's that is that your website, no matter how big or small, how big your audience is or small your audience is, or I would say tailored is your audience, you're now speaking to two audiences. You're still speaking to humans, so you need a website experience that is going to delight and maybe enable people to fall in love with you and your brand. But you're also speaking to robots, and the way that you structure your content has to really inform the AI and the LLMs that are crawling on your website and creating answers. It's called answer engine optimization, or AEO. And so we work with a lot of companies right now. We've actually just created this AEO maturity model to help marketers understand how to structure their websites, from a stage 1 to a stage 5, the expert stage, so that they can really compete in this age where essentially the brand is disintermediated by LLMs. And so in a world like that, the type of content that you create for your website really matters, because people's first impression they have with your brand is actually happening before they even step digital foot on your website. And so we've been really focused on that.
Yeah, it's funny how the thought process for marketers has changed, or hopefully is changing, where I think the tip of the spear for most people was, here is my owned property, here is my website, and when you come, you'll get information about who we are and what we are. And maybe there's an ad, some sort of a hook that's driving to that, but the bulk of the research was done on my owned property. And now, and this is even before LLMs, that has really shifted to where the buyer journey is research. Used to be in Google, then it was with influencers and creators, hopefully podcasts and YouTube videos. But now we definitely have a different entity, which is LLMs, where the research phase is all happening offsite. And it seems like the conversions are happening on site. If the on-site experience is going to be dynamic, how do you make sure that you're giving a steady, reputable signal to the LLMs if that's where your consumers are going to do the research?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And it fits in on a trend line, and the trend line is uh, what we are seeing. And again, we're in early innings, so we'll see how this plays out over time. Um, Overall traffic to websites will go down, but the type of traffic that gets to your website will be much further down the funnel, and so will be much more qualified traffic. And so finding out that right tuning so that you have enough consistency in place with the content on your website that you're sending the right signal to the LLM, which will end up becoming one of the first experiences that people have with the brand, and yet have a highly conversion oriented site for the high traffic, for the high quality traffic that will end up there. That will be the secret ingredient. Number one, and then number two, I'll say something spicy. I think or you judge whether it's spicy.
I'm listening.
I think in this age, the and I call it, looking over at a sea of sameness. Because I think one of the unintended consequences of AI is that we're gonna end up seeing a lot of content out there and experiences out there that just look the same. I think in this environment, your ability to be creative will be your competitive advantage. And that will bring marketing back to its roots. That will bring us back to our storytelling roots that mixes qualitative and quantitative data into a place where we tell stories that break through and enable our teams to be extraordinarily creative to compete both on the answer engine optimization side and then when people come into the website experience.
That's like the medium red salsa of spiciness. I think that, the idea that the experiences will be relatively the same, I think is logic. I think what really matters is your ability to context filter, right? It's one of the things that we've really worked on a lot here with our interview prep is not just like, how do we figure out what the questions are and what the topics are for our podcast? How do we do our research? It's how do we give an LLM the context of why we are different, what we are about? How do we give it information about who you are? How do we tell it what is important to the audience in real time? Then give us suggestions. And so there's that notion as if you're able to give clear guidelines to an LLM about what makes you unique, you'll have a unique experience, right? It's just the same thing as if you gave that information to a human and said, this is what makes us different. Go create something in line with what makes us different. You'll be novel. Now, to me, what is interesting is what are those experiences and how that shift is changing. You already said, all right, well, people are doing their buyer research up front and that the purpose of your website is dramatically changing. It is now a down funnel tool. Talk to me a little bit about the capabilities, like what is actually driving impact as opposed to what everybody is just talking about because we all still have a website, we all still have content. We know people are in LLM. What is actually driving business results?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think about it in the context of attention first and foremost. Like, I'm a subscriber to the belief that we're in an attentional economy right now, and the people that win um, are the people that not only grab attention, but they can hold attention for long periods of time. And so, again, this is where I bring up the importance of a deeply immersive brand forward, but also growth first website experience becomes really important because once you've grabbed people's attention either through answer engines, but mostly other channels. We live in a fragmented media landscape right now, and it continues to get more and more fragmented. Once you capture people's attention there, they've got to go to a place to actually learn more about who you are and why you matter. And that's where the website experience tool to the marketer becomes extraordinarily important. So back to capabilities. One of the primary capabilities that I see, and I think AI is an accelerant here. One of the primary capabilities I see is having platforms that bring all of the various stakeholders in the marketing mix onto the same platform collaborating together with the right guardrails in place so that they can move really fast, but they're actually working on it together. And so I'll give you an example. I was talking to a customer last week at Inbound, and she's got a great website, but she's got designers, I believe in Israel, who like to go off brand every now and then. And she really wants to enable them to move really quickly, but they're also doing it in a way that's kind of off brand. And so we were talking to her about like the importance of having what we call over here a brand operating system in place. And that's just fancy for all of your design standards and variables are all in the right place. And you've got guardrails in place so that people can move quickly, but they're all doing it within the brand context that the marketing leader has set. So that's just an example of a capability that will become even more important as marketing moves faster and faster.
Earlier, you talked about the idea of being able to iterate quickly, and one of the things that Webflow is great for is, and AI specifically is great for, is accelerating experimentation. How do you structure AI initiatives to avoid all of the experimentation you're doing end up in the experimentation graveyard?
I think the graveyard is a feature, not a bug. I mean, I think the sign of healthy experimentation is that you're gonna fail, and failure is fine as long as you're failing fast and you're learning from it. And so, I've interacted with like marketing teams that don't have the psychological safety to fail, and the telltale sign is they don't have a graveyard in place. And so, I'm a huge proponent of that graveyard. In fact, I think that again, like I said earlier, it's a feature, not a bug. I think marketing teams should be celebrating every experiment that goes out the door, and should be what we do over here is we try to market in the open as much as possible. And so our team over here is experimenting all the time with new uses of AI and new uses of AI within our product. And we like to blog about it. We like to say what's working well. We tried this thing, it didn't really work well, and we're learning from it. And I think that becomes really important because, again, if you subscribe to the fact that we're in early innings, one of the primary barriers to adoption right now of AI in marketing is people just don't know where to start. And so I think the winners out there will be the ones who are experimenting in the open, have a bias towards experimentation, and become magnets to other marketers and marketing practitioners to follow their lead. And so that's really what I'm watching for. Who's experimenting out in the open?
One, great answer. Experimentation graveyard is a feature. You should be experimenting, and when an experiment doesn't work, actually that means it works. That means you have the learning of what not to do moving forward. Let me reframe the question a little bit. It's not about how to avoid your experiments going into the experimentation graveyard. How do you avoid wasting resources with experimentation? How do you not spend
Yeah.
all of your time trying to build something and then say, "Oh, actually, nope, this doesn't work. Shoot. Now we wasted 3 cycles."
I think of my dad sometimes. So my dad was a doctor and a scientist, and I think I learned about experimentation through him. I obviously did not go down his profession route. There's something about hospitals and blood that didn't really work for me. But this idea of experimentation being a really important part of what we do, and one of the things he impressed upon me is how to design smart, well-run tests. That everything has a hypothesis, everything has a control and an exposed. Everything has a really smartly defined experiment design, and then everything has an opportunity to do a retrospective on what did we learn in the process, and then how are we applying it back to the work that we're doing. I've carried that with me, from a marketing perspective, and a lot of the work that I've done, be it go-to-market strategies where you put together positioning, you put it in market, and the teams that win are the teams that quickly learn whether or not that positioning is landing in the way that you want it to. And if it's not, you've got this fast feedback loop back to the business to kind of take those insights and retry it. So to me, it's all about the experimental design and the culture of experimentation.
I interviewed the CMO of Meta, and he preached the value of incrementality. And one of the
Yeah.
reasons why we worked together at eBay 20 years ago. And I was like, "How did you go from where we were together to being the CMO of Meta?" And he was like, "It was incremental gains all the time, whether it was my team or whether it was my career. It was one small step to one small step to one small step." And I really thought that that notion of incrementality is perfect because it takes the pressure off from having to go from, almost nothing to I've got everything. On the flip side, when you're experimenting constantly and taking little incremental gains, it doesn't necessarily give you the same control, totally unrelated to Alex's career. But it doesn't necessarily give you the control of which direction you're going. Well, the experiment says go a little left, and the next one says go a little left, and then we get one right and two left, and left and left and left, and now all of a sudden we're we're leaning. How do you maintain control when you're constantly experimenting? And the reason why I think this is important is we're not necessarily in control of the experiments as much anymore. And so if we keep optimizing towards incremental gains, how do we make sure that we're still just pointed at the North Star?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so first of all, this I learned. I knew that you looked familiar, so I think you and I and Alex were both at eBay right around the same time, and probably learned a lot from Gary Briggs, who taught us a lot about this balance between brand building and experimentation has to
God,
all
it's a
operate in the
small
same.
world. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so Alex has really applied those learnings back from eBay days in a really effective way, both for experimentation and brand building at Facebook or Meta at this point. Um, I think that there's a role for experimentation, but there's also a role for taking big swings that are based on more qualitative information and let's just say brand positioning and brand attributes, or understanding of where the brand needs to head. And so I think really successful marketing strategists today have this balanced portfolio of incrementality based experimentation and an understanding of go to market strategy, changes that are happening in the market, changes that are happening in categories, and where and how to position your brand in a way that is taking advantage of those shifts. And so all of it needs to work together.
There's a traffic metaphor, and I'll go back to Boston here, where all of the streets in Boston are originally created by cow paths. So there is nothing linear, right? There is no go straight for a mile. It's you stay on this street and it curves around based on where all the cows went. So if you want to go 100 miles north because your goal is to get out of the city, you have to go all sorts of left and right and turn and twist. And I to me, there's a metaphor here between experimentation with artificial intelligence, which is you're constantly sort of volleying back and forth and optimizing, but you still do have to understand what the end goal is. Otherwise, you'll just end up going in circles. So what's the right way that marketers, specifically, CMOs or your customers, can maintain their focus on the general direction they want to head without just, getting stuck in traffic going left and right and back and forth?
I'm sure there's an inappropriate big dig metaphor that gets you through all of the cow paths and all of that. I think it is probably the hardest thing for the marketing leader to do right now, which is again how to have that balanced portfolio of all of the experimentation and the direction forward. And I think this is one of those things where using the marketer's superpower of being extraordinarily customer focused, extraordinarily market oriented, um, such that we have a, a clear eyed view of what's going on in the world around us and the categories around us, so that we can say, this is what the next 3 years of this market looks like now. And this is the overall directionality that it's going in. Now, exactly how to get to that end goal is unclear at this point, and we're going to experiment our way into it. But this is the shift that is happening. And I think this is one of it's one of the biggest challenges and the fun part of the job, to be honest.
There's always an art and science to marketing. Right?
Yeah.
There's always a balance between the data and the creative, the science, the technology, the artistry. And I think that as much as we're in our big poppy, our, universal change moment with artificial intelligence, striking that fundamental balance of this is where we're going as opposed to this is what our next turn needs to be is always a challenge. It's always a balance, and it really does take true talent to be able to navigate the creative, the scientific, the technology, the direction, the strategy all at once. It's really hard to find a great marketer, and artificial intelligence can help us with the experimentation, but it can't help us figure out that balance between the scientific and the creative as well.
I think that's why I like this job so much, and again, I'm so glad that you brought up the eBay days because well, first of all, I can't think of there are a few brands as special as eBay, and the pathway that we were building back then. But second of all, I think that's where I really learned the importance of stories and narratives. Um, and I believe that stories and narrative, I mean, they're since the dawn of age, stories have been the thing that motivates people to take action, to do things, to be better than they are at that point. And it's also one of those things that AI is gonna be an assistant in, it's gonna be a co-pilot in, but ultimately, and this is where we come back to creativity, ultimately the human is gonna be at the center of that because of everything that we're bringing up.
Yes, stories and a reverse timer. Dave, I want to move on to our lightning round where I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about navigating the AI boom. Are you ready?
I'm ready, I think. I think
All
I'm
right.
ready.
All right,
Yes.
here we go. What's the most overhyped AI use case in marketing right now?
Content as an end goal.
Content as an end goal. Explain.
I mean, again, content is a good entryway in AI adoption, AI usage, but it's not all 9 innings. It is the first inning. It's your way of getting onto the field, but the bigger opportunities for us are in agentic AI workflows, bringing teams together, putting the marketer at the center of orchestrating a whole set of customer experiences. And so I think it's above and beyond content itself.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm spending so much more time building orchestration and workflows to give context to a large language model than I am actually working in a large language model saying, hey, give me my show notes, give me my LinkedIn copy, whatever it is. It's all about creating the workflows that automate those tasks being done for you so you can be the editor of the output as opposed to the creator.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to our next question. With the rise of vibe coding and no code tools, where is the line of responsibility between the marketing teams and the engineering teams?
It's blurry, but it still exists. Marketing owns the vision. Engineering owns the reliability. It's one of the things that I think a lot of people are missing right now. I think vibe coding is hugely important. Vibe coding, vibe marketing as well. It helps with vision creation, but ultimately, especially as you move up market and brands rely on, trust and reliability and safety and security, you need a great engineering team and a great infrastructure team to make sure what it is we are building and the visions that we're setting are 100% reliable to customers.
Maybe I should have changed this question. Maybe it should have been, what's the word that you would describe the relationship? And yours would have been blurry. My word would be disappearing, right? I actually think that marketers are becoming engineers. And maybe it's just my personal experience, but I'm spending more time vibe coding, writing Python scripts, writing JavaScript, right? Like figuring out error handling, look at log reports, figuring out what's broken. And I'm like, I'm not creating billboards and slogans anymore. This is not marketing. I am 100% building engineering workflows for the marketing department. But and the more that it's just the same way that marketing, we've gone through this phase where marketers were data scientists. Now we are data scientists and engineers and strategists and creatives and designers and it just seems like it's a never ending prospect of the evolution of marketers is we touch every part. We are the cog in the middle of the wheel.
One of the reasons why I love the Webflow brand, which I'm still learning today, is it is a mission driven brand, and our mission is to give everybody developer superpowers. And I think that that is the way to express some of what you just brought up. I said blurred, you said non-existent, but I'll give another word. I think marketing teams and marketers and engineering teams and engineers, we're now more interconnected and interdependent than we ever have been. It used to be marketers are over here, engineers are over here, and maybe you've got product management in the middle. Now everything is converging together, and it's really great to see.
The poor PMs, we're just basically, we've digested their turf. We're sitting on their lap. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Based on your experience at GitLab, Cloudflare, and now Webflow, what is your one universal truth for marketing B2B tech companies?
Oh, everything is changing all the time. It's what makes it so exciting. It's not like marketing is not static. Um, I believe that by the way, not just B2B, but B2C as well. And I've had it, I had a great career in B2C as we just talked about, but then that jump from B2C to B2B has been phenomenal. And seeing the amount of change that has happened in B2B technology and B2B marketing more broadly. This thing is not stopping. It's changing all the time. And the winners, I think, in this space are gonna be the ones who can adapt to change the quickest. We talked about experimentation, but it's really this idea of, like, things are never static in this world.
Yeah, I think of marketing very much like I think about the stock market, right? You can have your long plays, you can have things that you anchor on, but nothing's ever certain, right? Apple ate Xerox, and now it might be OpenAI is eating Apple. Like, who knows? But, for a long period of time, you could bet on the stability. But there's a lot of up and comers that come and they go, and some have high growth rates and some are slow burns. And the only thing that is certain is that nothing lasts forever and it's always going to change.
It's always gonna change. It's always gonna change. Yep.
All right. Where do you see the biggest risk of marketers trusting AI?
Every now and then I'll engage with what I think of, kinda lazy marketing, where the marketers, stops thinking for themselves, stops applying their judgment, um, and puts something into ChatGPT, or Claude, and then just takes the output and sends the email out without actually thinking it through, or creates the creative brief without actually, like, really thinking strategically about, is this the right creative brief, or is this the right content, or is this the right experimentation, approach to take? And so I think the biggest risk isn't overly trusting AI. It's forgetting the important role that the marketer serves as a human being and chief orchestrator of the creativity and brand building and growth that they're putting out in the market. If we abdicate our role to LLMs, um, we're just going to be sloppy.
Yeah, it's funny. I find myself doing more vibe coding, becoming more of an engineer, doing more things that I don't understand, and testing and experimenting and building out our workflows, and that's all well and good. When I'm done with like this 3-hour coding session and I've got this wonderful, well orchestrated workflow that now, automatically does the work we used to do, I find myself being very stupid. Right, I am just I because I you get trained to going back and forth and taking what the LLM gives you and then seeing if it works and just assume right, and stopping the critical thinking. I don't have the ability to read the code, right? I don't speak that language, right? I code in English.
Yeah.
But then when I'm done and I'm just, in this habit of going back and forth and taking what it says and see if it works, and I'm done vibe coding. If you ask me my middle name, half the time I'm like, "Blah, blah, blah," I can't process a rational thought. And I do think that that happens to marketers where they're just like, write this copy, write this copy, write this copy, create this brief, and then they stop thinking and just want the outputs. It's like mind numbing.
Yeah, let me give you a great use case, which is AI as your chief of staff. And the way that that played out for me has been game changing. So I started my job here, and my boss created a CMO, chief of staff GPT, and he fed it with all the context and all of the insights inside the company and also his thinking and different frameworks for making decisions. And then he said, look, for the first month, I'd like you to be Dave's onboarding buddy, be there to answer his questions. But on month two, I want you to go from onboarding buddy to his chief of staff. And I don't want you to just have Dave as like a mediocre CMO. I want him to be the top 1% of CMOs out there. So challenge his thinking, et cetera, et cetera. And I use this at least once a day as my partner. And so that's the way to not be lazy, right? That's the way to treat this thing really as a chief of staff, essentially, who's sitting right by me and helping me make decisions.
I named mine Jarvis, and I told it to be a Jarvis-like assistant as if it was an Iron Man, but specifically to help me grow my business, and
Yeah.
that seemed to be enough context for it to understand that it should keep asking me questions. All right, let me move on to the last question. If you had to bet on one to win the battle, which frontier model are you picking?
I can't make that bet because, or I can't make that call because things are changing all the time. I've really enjoyed using ChatGPT. In my last job, we were an Anthropic shop, so I used Claude all the time, and so I can't make the call at this point. I think the game. I said early innings earlier. I'm committing to early innings.
That's not an answer.
I'm sticking
That's
to it, Ben.
okay. Yeah, I have mixed emotions. I use mostly Claude right now, and I do think that the rumor is we've hit max frontier model with GPT-5, and it's just not getting incrementally better. I don't believe that for one possible second. I do think that understanding context and be able to pull in more research from the rest of the real world will continue to get better and continue to refine tone. The more I think about it, and I haven't been bullish on them before, but I think Gemini, because of the context that Google has and the access to the underlying data source, I would probably put my chips into that stack, but I am very hesitant. I think GPT has the first mover advantage. I use Claude and think that right now it's the best model. And I think that when you look at the underlying data source, how could you beat Google? And that's my take.
I mean, look, we're 3 years into a decades long journey. The other side of it is it might even be the wrong question to ask because the frontier model is the commodity, or it will increasingly become the commodity. It's the context that's added on top of it. And so for me, the interesting questions, and I have skin in the game, I have a stake in this, is which platforms on which parts of workflows, marketing workflows, et cetera. But you can also say developer workflows, which platforms that sit on top of these models have the best context available. And there's a big race with GitHub and GitLab. And I think in the marketing world, Webflow is it's going to give it a go.
All right. Well, I'm rooting for you from the sidelines, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And one last question for you. I know this is off the record, and we just have to ask, who's your favorite Red Sox player?
A Big Poppy. When you said Big Poppy, I remember taking my daughter to Red Sox games, and we'd always go just to see Big Poppy.
I've always been a Mark Pedroia fan because he's the most fun to say with a Boston accent, and I'll save everybody from hearing it. But
Safe,
that
safe.
that wraps up this episode of the MarTech podcast. Thanks for listening to my conversation with Dave Steer, the CMO of Webflow. If you'd like to get in touch with Dave, you can find a link to his LinkedIn profile in our show notes or on martechpod.com, or you could visit his company's website, which is webflow.com. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button in your podcast app or visit us on YouTube, where we'll be back in your feed next week. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.